Hi everyone, nice to see you and welcome back. So you might remember from our last video that we began to look at the difference between obsessive thoughts and natural and human worry. We also began to explore the cycle of OCD and what this looks like for us. We began to think about the types of thoughts that we might be experiencing at the moment and also how these thoughts make us feel emotionally and also physically. We also began to think about how these feelings often drive a set of behaviours for us or compulsions, and often this cycle in itself can become very distressing and really hard for us to break. In this video we'll look a bit more in depth at what our physical symptoms mean and why we experience them. When we experience a thought, especially if it's a frightening or a distressing thought, this causes a real physical change in our body. Imagine for a moment that your brain gives you the thought, what if I'm responsible for passing on the virus? When a thought like this shows up, you might experience a change in physical feelings. You might notice your heart beginning to race, your mouth going dry, you might notice your stomach churning or even beginning to feel a bit breathless. These physical feelings in themselves may even cause your brain to generate new thoughts. Maybe I've already got the virus, maybe I've already caused harm. How will I know? What if I become ill? So why do we experience these physical feelings and what do they mean? When faced with danger, we have essentially three choices. 1, we fight for our lives. 2, we run away. 3, we stay as still as possible and hope that the danger passes without noticing us. Our brains are hardwired to trigger a protective response whenever we perceive there to be a danger nearby. And it's this that enables us to be physically ready to do one of these three things: fight, run, or freeze. And often we refer to this response as the fight, flight, or freeze response. Essentially, when we perceive danger, our brains sound a warning alarm. And it's this warning alarm which triggers a response in our body and releases a flood of adrenaline into the bloodstream. The purpose of this adrenaline? To ready the body, physically for running or for fighting. Adrenaline causes our heart to race, to speed up, and that's in order to pump the blood harder around the body so that we can fuel the muscles that we would need if we were fighting or running from a threat. Our breathing becomes more rapid and shallow, and that's so that we can have more oxygen in our bloodstream, more for our muscles to burn as a fuel. The problem is that when this oxygen isn't used, it can make us feel pretty lousy, and we might notice feeling dizzy, sick, blurred vision, even tingling in our extremities, or feelings of unreality. This isn't dangerous, but it can feel really scary. This response also slows down our digestive system, so that all our energy and all our resources can be poured into fighting or running. But this might mean that we notice our mouth going dry as our saliva production stops, or butterflies in our stomach. Our appetite maybe disappears, or we maybe feel a bit sick. Although it feels really unpleasant when this happens, it's this very response which helps to keep us alive in day-to-day life. Whether it be sending us a signal to run away from that angry-looking dog coming towards us in the park, or the signal that tells us to pull an emergency stop when another driver pulls out in front of us. But our brains are really clever, and they've learned to sound this warning alarm not only in response to a physical threat that's right in front of us, but also in response to an imagined threat. This means that a simple thought about the future, or a what-if thought, can trigger our alarm system and cause our bodies to go into the fight, flight, freeze response. In the case of an obsessive thought, we may experience this really regularly. We can't fight it, we can't run from it, and we can't hide from it. But what it tells us could or might happen really feels dangerous. And this is when we find ourselves engaging in compulsive behaviours, which temporarily turn off our danger alarm, temporarily giving us some relief from some of these physical symptoms. Essentially, we learn to do certain things a certain way, and these things take away the unpleasant feelings, short term. And we're rewarded by not having to feel our heart race anymore and not having to feel our stomach churn. But this means we're more likely to use these compulsive behaviours again to get the same sense of relief. This is a cycle known as negative reinforcement. This also means that over time, our alarm systems become more and more sensitive to possible danger, and this often means that our warning alarm is triggered when it maybe isn't needed. A bit like our fire alarm going off when we've burnt the toast, but there isn't actually a fire. The difficulty is, if we always use our compulsions as a way of turning off this alarm, we actually don't get a chance to see what would happen if we didn't. In this way, we begin to believe that our response to that alarm and the compulsions that we used are what have kept us safe in the long run. What we do know is that just as our brains are capable of sounding this alarm and triggering it, they're also capable of turning it off, but they need a little more time to do this. By allowing our alarm to sound but without responding and using our compulsions can feel really uncomfortable, but it isn't dangerous. If we can learn to sit with some of these physical feelings a little longer and allow them to run their course without trying to turn them off or rid ourselves of them, we start to find that they begin to reduce on their own. We maybe don't get that sudden surge of relief that we would if we were to use our compulsive behaviours. In fact, we might even find that we experience wee surges as our alarm attempts to kick in again. This can be a bit like waiting out a stubborn toddler throwing a tantrum. They want you to respond. They won't go down without a fight, and we might get that up and down. But if we can stay strong and resist using our compulsions to turn the alarm off artificially, over time our physical distress does come down naturally. This process allows us to test out our original frightening thoughts, to see that perhaps they haven't come true, they haven't become a reality for us. We also begin to realise that our compulsive behaviour and the rituals that we've previously employed perhaps aren't what have been protecting us. Over time and practice of doing this, our alarm system also becomes a little less sensitive and is probably triggered less often. Although we might still have the same old thoughts that pop up for us, over time we probably have a less intense physical response to them, and they're probably easier to cope with even when they do come up. The most important thing is to allow this alarm to sound without responding, to understand what it is and to resist using our compulsions. By slowing our breathing down and focusing on smoothing out each breath, this can really help to kickstart the part of our nervous system which turns that alarm off for us. There are lots of different breathing exercises out there, lots to experiment with and try. All of them have the same main aim, and this is just to slow our breath down, to help us become more aware of when we're breathing too quickly as well. Breathing exercises are not a magic or a quick fix, but can really help us tolerate the uncomfortable physical sensations and to take the edge off them so that they're more manageable. You can check out some breathing exercises on the links at the end of this video so that you can experiment with them and try them out in your own time. I hope this has been useful to make sense of your physical feelings and what they're about and why they affect you the way they do. Thank you for watching and check out the other videos.